the government of Uganda, Minister Alupo, for holding this conference here and hosting us in Uganda. As you will hear throughout the conference, we'll be touching on many subjects, from infrastructure to content. But there's no more important subject than making sure that not only African countries deliver access, but also the quality of education which will be needed for Africa and countries like Uganda to compete on the global stage in the coming years. So again, this is a very, very important conference, as it is every year, because we see the progress the continent has made. We see the economic advances that the continent has made, but also realize that much progress still has to be made in terms of developing the skills that the children will need today and tomorrow for Africa to be more of an economic powerhouse on the global stage. So we're very honored to have a distinguished panel, and let me first turn to Minister Alupo here and ask the first question. You launched Skill Uganda to improve the quality of education and the outcomes. And in doing so, you involved civil society, but also the private sectors and companies like Toyota to develop curriculum and to make sure that you understood the needs of industry going forward. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you've done specifically to make sure that the private sector needs were included in the curriculum?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Here in Uganda, government works very closely with the private sector in all ministries, departments, and agencies. I would like to take this opportunity to respond specifically to the relationship between the education sector and the private sector. Most of the policies that we have in the sector are formulated after in-depth consultations with the private sector and members of the public. So that means that the development of our curricula at all stages is informed by all stakeholders, including the private sector. But most importantly, as you stated, in light with the skills that are needed now in the world of work, the government of Uganda, through the Ministry of Education, is in the process of establishing a skills development authority, which will compose of the private sector and government. And we are looking forward to having more of the private sector so that we can keep getting feedback from them on the required skills, and also we keep informing them on the intentions of government in light of establishing new policies and reviewing other policies which are in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll turn to our colleague here from Ghana. You said that you wanted to convert a lot of the polytechnic schools into technical universities and upgrade the quality of the teaching and of the learning. Can you summarize some of those plans and some of the actions that you're doing to implement this?
Chair, I'm not from Ghana. I'm from Zambia.
Sorry, Zambia, sir.
Yes. Since I'm speaking for the first time, allow me also to thank the government of Uganda for hosting this very important conference. And also allow me to thank the other organizers like AfricanBrains for this initiative. Zambia is focusing its attention towards developing a human resource. And to do that, there's no better forum than our schools. And we are mainstreaming ICT as a leverage for imparting knowledge in our learners. Yeah.
So can you tell us more specifically, you mentioned that you were going to build 5 more universities in the country. Do you have a time frame for this, an idea of the resources that you're putting behind this?
Yes. The policy is to build a university in every province. We have 10 provinces. So far, we have started with those 5 universities and at various stages. But other than those 5 universities, we are also upgrading some colleges into universities. Yes, time frame may be very difficult for us to come with because the program is ambitious, as you can see. But it suffices to say that we should be able to complete the 5 universities within 5 years. We are approaching the building of this university in a phased manner. Once these 5 are completed, we will embark on the other 5.
Thank you very much. I'll turn to our colleague from Angola now. Angola's known extraordinary economic growth in the last few years. Yet there's still a need to increase the percentage of the national budget which is dedicated to education. Can you tell us a little bit more about the plans to do that and how you're going to achieve this?
Your Excellency, Minister of Uganda. First of all, I'd like to send my greetings on behalf of the organization on this important forum that we are currently having. And I'd also like to express our sincere gratefulness for the organization of this meeting, so that we can be able to talk about problems that we're dealing with in this continent of Africa. We have developed in Angola a plan which seeks to improve the quality of education, and the government in my country has made a lot of progress in the last few years. We've worked hard, especially in the last 3 years. We've made particular effort to increase financing and taking advantage of the growth that we've had within the last few years. We identified education as a very important cause, and that we've tried to reflect that in the national budget, talking about 8.8% of the national budget currently is dedicated towards education. At the time when the country is going through tremendous economic growth within the last several years, we have branded ourselves internationally, and we all know that our country has a main commodity is oil, and we've seen a drop in oil prices, and at the same time we've also seen that this affected the amount of money that we've committed to education, and so we went down to 6% of the national budget towards education. That's from 8%, and that so the government has had to react because we've had to have a positive impact in spite of these changes to make sure that we continue to make sure that the primary and secondary school technical school networks continue to be improved. And we also have a program of skills improvement, especially technical skills, especially for professionals, for Angolan professionals. And through several programs that we currently have in the country, namely the Learning for All, with specific components in strengthening of technical skills. But we also do have a program where we try to improve and upgrade we currently have a system where we are evaluating the existing systems. We have a partnership with the World Bank to carry out an evaluation of our education process. We hope that at the end of this exercise we'll be able to reach improve the general literacy rate, because at the time we are shooting for 82%. And this is the information that I would be able to offer. That's the first reaction that I would give to the question that you just asked. And, obviously, there's more information, but I'll be able to talk about that later. Thank you very much.
Minister Mkhize, in the South African development plans, you've mentioned the necessity to connect schools so the children, but not the children alone, but also the educators would have access to ICT resources and be able to connect to company needs in a much more practical manner. Can you elaborate on some of the plans that South Africa has to achieve this?
Thank you very much. I would also like to thank the organizers and our host. Basically, we are rolling out broadband to the villages. There has been broadband which has been rolled out to big cities, our golden cities, mainly by the private sector. So the focus currently is to ensure that the schools in the most remote rural areas are connected. But, you know, the Department of Telecoms and Postal Services has a responsibility also to create a demand by ensuring that services are online, that the technology that has been deployed to schools is used to promote creativity, entrepreneurial thinking, and above everything, to assist teachers to teach in creative ways so as to create the leaders of the skills that are needed tomorrow. The future is digital, so we are hoping that through the deployment of technologies in our schools, in partnership with the private sector, we will be able to come up with people who will drive the future, the economy, and all other necessities for a new South Africa by 2030.
The next question goes to our panelist, Mr. Ombakho. Globally, there's been a huge disconnect between the world of education and the world of work, and Africa is the same. It is often said that the jobs that our children will be in do not exist today. Is it just a matter of matching skills with the opportunities? And what are you doing in your country to anticipate those drastic changes which are taking place?
I hope this is on. Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to start by giving the apologies of the Cabinet Secretary, Professor Jacob Kaimenyi, who was very keen to attend to this, but due to other urgent calls, could not make it. But he's with us at this point. Next, I would like to appreciate the invitation from the Minister of Education Uganda, which was received and acknowledged. He sent me, of course, and I'll try to cover what I will be able to. Yes, there are changes that are happening, and these are being addressed, and of course have to be addressed by change in ways of developing skills. And this is only achievable through collaboration with industry to understand what industry requires in as far as the manpower that is coming out of our education systems. We have the public-private partnership policy, and of course, we also have the Act, PPP Act of 2013, which gives us quite good direction in terms of private sector participation, right from school curricula through to development of technologies and innovations. So I think we are set for those changes that goes with a few challenges that come in, but it's good to note about the outcome, the recent outcome of the 2015 Global Competitiveness report that has given Kenya a number 99 globally, 9 in Africa. Of course, I appreciate Mauritius is the first in terms of that competitiveness. South Africa is second. But what I'm trying to say is we are trying to catch up through development of relevant skills and in terms of the job market to create the youth employabilities. Thank you very much.
We'll go to Minister Alupo, please. Last year at Innovation Africa 2014, you talked about the SESIMAT program to improve science and math teaching. At the same time, you established a 2% levy on mobile airtime operators to help fund information, communications, and technologies, equipment and skills, especially for rural areas. Could you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, indeed, I did allude to the SESIMAT program that we ran here in Uganda in the last summit in Kigali.
Yes.
And the reason is that the focus of government of Uganda in improving the quality of learning and teaching and also learning outcomes is to a very big extent centered on teachers. So the SESIMAT program that we do here in Uganda is in line with retooling our teachers of secondary schools with creative teaching methods, with new ICT teaching mechanisms, and we do that program every holiday when the children are at home. We invite teachers to designated centers where we have experts in mathematics and ICT run them through programs during the holiday, and their results in the field show that the SESMAT program has been very successful, because you know for a fact that technology is very versatile. It's not static. And if you are talking about ICTs, you are going to talk about a module today which may not be relevant in the classroom tomorrow. So the idea is to keep the teachers at the pace of technology in the classroom, and would like to thank the government of Japan because they have been supporting us in that program by the tune of about 70% in terms of resources that we use to run the program. But we would also like to welcome other partners to continue supporting us in that program so that we can turn around the effectiveness of teachers in using technologies and ICTs across the country in all our schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question, I will turn to our colleague from Zambia. You just mentioned the importance of the government of Japan supporting you, and you've enlisted the feedback loop. You've enlisted USAID, DFID, UNICEF, and other development agencies in your country to implement those programs that you have launched. Can you tell us a little bit more about the impact of that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, would want to actually thank the cooperating partners you have mentioned in helping us with some resources. Currently, they have contributed to education to the tune of 23 million US dollars. And we work together in implementing the programs through the national implementation framework. And we also show transparency in the way we use the money, both from the budget and from the cooperating partners, by having a joint annual review. Through the national implementation program, we are able to monitor the programs or the projects that should be implemented. And we have been doing this since 2012, and it will come to termination in 2016. But otherwise, we are working very well, and we have been very transparent in the manner that we show our budgetary commitment through this national implementation framework.
And how do you measure, what are the metrics to measure success?
Well, we may not have a methodology of engaging the achievements, but since we are working together, the cooperative partners, the civil society, and ourselves, we are able to see programs which have been completed or projects which have been completed. And together, we are able to move on with new programs or uncompleted programs.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll turn our next question to the minister from South Africa here. And your government has been very clearly committed to enabling teachers and students to integrate ICT and to connect the country. Can you specifically give us some examples of what some provinces, Gauteng or other provinces, have done in that respect, working with the private sector and making sure that those needs meet the requirements of the economy and the private sector going forward?
Come up with a new policy, broadband rollout policy, South Africa Connect. And there is a national budget which has been put forward to ensure that we promote the connection, ICT connections. The provinces themselves, they've come up with big budgets. It's some more than $1 billion. And also the private sector, through the regulator as part of universal service obligation, have made huge commitments to partner with government in ensuring that schools are connected and teachers are also trained. So it has become part of a transformation agenda for assisting teachers to teach differently, to improve the quality of education and generally the mindset of the learners and teachers and parents. So it has created, there's this digital revolution which has been set, and the project is carefully monitored so as to ensure that the set targets in terms of connectivity and the speed of accessing internet are realized by 2016, 2020 up to 2030 in line with our National Development Plan, Vision 2030. I think what is important also in the context of this conference is that we're at the point where we're trying to bring closer our partners from the private sector. While in the past they will choose the area, like especially the big cities tends to be an attraction of cooperating with schools, we're really encouraging talking to them, those who are involved in training, the teachers, to prioritize those who are in remote rural areas, but also not only looking at them as targets for trainings and also creating ICT hubs at a village level, which feed into other aspects of education outcomes, like ensuring that the small, medium enterprise developments that are encouraged, and also innovation at a local level. And young people are attracted to ICT. They tend to be more ICT savvy. And so we encourage the private sector to assist them to develop special applications which will help with local content. And so hopefully they will innovate beyond that and begin to feed into the system and make education to be a real feeder to the economy of the country.
Thank you very much. I think that connection at the rural level, as you were mentioning, is critical to achieve better outcomes in broader context than cities. Let me turn back to Angola now. And you've often said that to develop top quality skills for educators, they needed to be certified to international standards, to be the best in class. Can you tell us what you're doing in that area of certification and what framework you've put in place to make sure that this meets the requirements of the Angolan economy going forward?
I was saying that right now we are developing, we come up with a cocktail of activities that compared to what we used to do before. Right now, we're coming up with a network of teachers, and we're working to improve their technical skills, and we're also going on to do an evaluation of the teaching process that we do have for our students. At the same time, we are promoting an environment, a legal environment, which allows the use of participation of different actors and different systems, services, educational services on the government level. And so we're not just thinking about teachers on a national level, but we're also thinking about international teaching tools, which allow students so that they can and besides that, we're also coming up with a legal framework. We have different providers of educational materials beyond our nation and within the law as required. We currently have them offering different size educational services, and we have determined the quality through legislation, and so that enables us that to have services that are recognized. So obviously we're thinking of beyond the national recognition, and we are also thinking about what is recognized internationally. And so we're doing that through a system that we created, and we have a national certification system. And through this national certification system, we seek to articulate or identify professional training, formal education for the educators, and at the same time we are thinking of competencies that are required, which are lifelong competencies that would be needed. So by doing this, talking about professional training or formal education and also informal education, using these three pillars, this is how then we certify these three, our teachers. That's how we can say that that's our certification system that we are currently using. Based on this framework, we are not just giving the certification so that they can be recognized, but we are also seeking to certify educational systems. If you can allow me just to finish off by saying that all the efforts that we are making, particularly in talking about the training of people, we're doing most of this work within the framework with a very broad framework. So because we want to create some sort of infrastructure that we'll be able to use to connect different schools. We'll start with a primary school network, and they're also connected, and then we will hope that we transform Angola into a society that is sensitive to information and appreciates information. And we feel that by 2017 we'll have the first Angolan satellite in orbit, and we'll be able to extend our broadband network, and that will help us to be able to overcome the difficulties that we have right now as far as the connectivity is concerned. Thank you.
My last question will go to our colleague from Kenya. You have implementing the digital learning program. How do you make sure that the educators, the teachers, the trainers have the requisite skills in information communication technologies to pass on those skills to the students? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is, how do you make sure those skills are relevant to the needs of the economy and the needs of the companies and the needs of government in the country?
Thank you. The process of enabling teachers or educators is an ongoing process. Though the devices are still being obtained, but the teachers are being trained, and it started off by having trainers of trainers. So the process is ongoing. Eventually, And of course, we are working with other players. Eventually, we expect to have a good cohort of teachers who are able to handle the digital training aspects. Now, when it comes to providing for industry, and this is also important in terms of developing talent in as far as innovation is concerned, because most of the innovations, if we went through, we find that most of them are ICT based. And that is by the same teachers who are expected to have some knowledge or from this training to be able to identify skills among trainees, among students, which can be enhanced. That way, then we are confident that we are able to continue getting the system oiled in terms of what is required in skills and knowledge. Industry plays an important role because the development of this is so fast. So there are changes every other day, so the industry has to be part of this whole system. I think that's how far I can take it for now. Thank you.
Okay. My last question today will go out to Minister Alupo. In the 2015 Ministry Performance Review, you've enacted the Higher Education Students Financing Act. How do you ensure that financing for education follows population growth, but also the needs of the economy? What mechanisms do you have in place to meet those needs? And I understand the budget for education for 2016 was slightly down from previous years. How do you bridge those gaps and make sure that you have the necessary resources?
Sorry, Chairman. I didn't pick the question properly.
Given the economic growth and the population growth of the country, how do you make sure that the Ministry for Education has the necessary resources, not just to follow that growth, but to anticipate future needs and continue to invest substantial funding in education in the country?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I know that the government of Uganda prioritizes human resource development among the top priorities. And that's why over the years, the budget for education sector has been rising. I don't think it's true that the budget for financial year 15-16 was lower than the earlier ones, because I know it has been rising by some percentage.
Okay, good.
So what is true is that the budget has been increasing over the years by some percentage. And I also know that Uganda is one of the countries in the world where there is population, rapid population increase.
Yes.
But amidst all the challenges, as I have said, we are implementing universal primary education, and we have been charging 7,000, we have been spending 7,000 shillings per child. Now, the year that you're talking about, government increased the funding from 7,000 to 10,000.
Okay.
So that means a lot, and that means that government has recognized that there is an increment in the enrollment figures and also wider challenges that come up every time. So we will continue working very closely with government as a sector to highlight the much more critical areas where funding is required, especially the focus now is on the Skilling Uganda project, where government is working with development partners to ensure that vocational and technical institutions are established in every district in the country. And where a technical institution is in a district, we intend to have technical institutions in every county. And we are moving quite well with development partners. So we recognize the fact that there are challenges in funding, but even when there are challenges, the resources that we have can do quite a lot of work if they are well utilized. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think we have time for more questions, so I'll try to wrap up and summarize what I think we've heard. One is there is a clear need for educators in Africa to work with industry, to work with civil society to recognize the requirements that are needed to make Africa compete on the global stage. Two, I think it involves the governments, of course, but also the educators at a grassroots level in cities, in rural areas, and make sure that ICT doesn't become just an end to itself, but a means to reach those education outcomes and those economic outcomes that we expect for Africa. And three is that for Africa to be recognized on the global economic stage, we have to have world-class standards in training, in certification, and in the education level of the children and the students. And I think the last thing that I'll take out from this panel is that, you know, the international community, you mentioned Japan, you mentioned some of the other NGOs such as UNICEF or DFID can help, but in the end, Africa has its own destiny, it's in own hands, and that is for the people of Africa, the students of Africa, to make the progress that is needed to achieve all these economic outcomes and better living standards, better standards for democracy as well, that is needed for the continent. So thank you very much to our panelists. We have a very short video, I think, which is going to run, and we'll end this session. Thank you very much.
When I was young, it seemed that life was so wonderful, a miracle. Oh, it was beautiful, magical. And all the birds in the trees, well, they'd be singing so happily, joyfully, oh, playfully, watching me. Then they sent me away to teach me how to be sensible, logical, oh, responsible, practical. And then they showed me a world where I could be so dependable, clinical, oh, intellectual, cynical.
Find magic again.
A miracle, oh, it was beautiful, magical.
Sprout by HP. With Intel RealSense technology inside, now you can bend the rules of creativity outside.